I want to talk about coping versus coding. Now, I talk a lot about your mind, your brain being like a computer, and so you have your hard drive where you save everything to, and essentially that's how I would describe the subconscious mind. So all the stuff that's stored in your head, that is stuff that you don't have to think about, that it just comes naturally. So where I've spoken before about you know, when you drive somewhere and you haven't even thought about how you've got there, you don't even remember the journey that you took to get somewhere, because your subconscious mind took over and it just allowed itself to take you there, because you know that journey, you know the pattern, you've done it so many times, it knows, so it does what it's always done. And that's obviously a positive of the subconscious mind, in as much as you don't have to think about getting there. You don't have to think about which way do I go next, is it left, is it right, where do I go next, because you've done it so many times, your mind already knows that programming, that pattern. But there are also the negative sides of that, where your mind will come up with patterns where it's used to going because of an experience in the past. So it's a repeating pattern, yeah. Likewise, when you're driving somewhere you drive to regularly, it's a repeating pattern. Your mind gets to know that pattern, that order of events and places, routes that you take. In the same way, your subconscious mind will understand that this happened, this something was said, something was done that made you feel this way. Well, when I feel this way, the next thing I do is I do this, and then the next thing from that is I do this. So it might be I feel sad, so then I start talking down to myself, then I start criticizing everything about myself, then I start thinking, well, what is the point of me even being here? Nobody else values me, nobody else has any time for me, nobody else thinks anything nice about me, I don't do anything good, I can't help anybody, I don't add anything positive to anybody's life. You see how the thought process expands just from that one feeling, and this won't be anything logical, this won't be anything that you know, makes sense now, or if you look back you'll think, oh my god, why did I do that? And it won't be the case of that it was a conscious thought that made you do that. It was the fact that that is your programming, because at some point somewhere along the line back in history there was an experience or an event that made you respond in that way to that thing. I could talk about this for ages, so I'm not going to go on about it for ages, because that wasn't the point of today. But what I wanted to say to that is the whole thing with coping versus coding. You're coded, like when you're born, you don't have any coding, in as much as it's like a new computer. You're new, you're fresh, you're ready to go. Every day is wonderful. You wake up, you're happy, and you then respond to your outside environment. You respond to what you're taught, you respond to what you learn, what you hear, what you're told. And for the first few years of your life, you take that as gospel from your parents, because you don't know any different. And then you start obviously going to school and having friends and seeing wider society, and your influences are wider. So instead of your parents creating all those beliefs and those feelings and emotions, you get that not only from your parents but from wider society. And then as you get older, obviously more and more experiences and events come into your life, and you get more and more and more patterns, more coding, more understanding about, well, when I do this, this is what happens next. So your subconscious is learning all the time and taking on and understanding everything to be allow you to basically operate without having to think. You know, like when you drive the car and you get somewhere, your subconscious has taken that job off of you effectively. You're doing it, you're there in the car, but you can't remember how you got there because your subconscious did it for you. So your subconscious will try and help you to like shorten the route, if you like, in everything. So whereas when you were a child you may have thought one thing and then had like 10 different feelings to get to a place, destination, if you like, now as an adult you're so used to going through those places, those steps, that your subconscious will take you from one to the start to the end result without going through all of those thoughts in between, because it knows where you're going. It knows how to get there because it's done it so many times before. So that's your coding. Now you can choose to either understand the coding, how it works, what happens, why it happens, and choose to like break those patterns when they're not helpful, because some coding obviously is helpful to us, but there are a lot of coding that we have that are not helpful. So you can either choose to break the coding, to recode, if you like, recode your mind so that you have new patterns and you create new patterns. And obviously, like when you're learning anything, learning to recode a pattern or habit, a belief that you've had or done or kept for many years can be a challenge, and it will take time for you to go to that place naturally where you start from one and you end up in the next altogether. You have to consciously do the work to go through all of the thoughts, the chain reaction, to get you to there, as you did when you were younger and you were going through all of these beliefs to get to the destination. If you want to get to a different destination, you need to get through those other steps first until your subconscious learns that that's the new pattern, this is the new way we go, this is the new route we take. And so eventually it will go there to there, but it needs to learn the steps first to be able to become that habit. Now that's coding. Coping is what a lot of people tend to teach or choose is the best way of dealing with things. Now I do and have done, and I do teach ways of coping with things that might be coming up, things that might be challenging to deal with at the time, because for me it's about both. But we shouldn't be reliant on coping mechanisms. It shouldn't be a case of you're broken, you're doing something that you know is not right, we're not going to bother trying to change that. We're just going to say, okay, well, we've got a fix to it. We'll just paper over the cracks. You know, if you've got a cracked wall, you're not just going to put new wallpaper over the top of it. You need to fill in those holes and then put the wallpaper over the top of it. Then you've got a nice new wall. You know, your hard drive, if you've got a computer that's got a bug in it and it keeps going round and keeps picking up this bug and it won't get rid of it, you don't just say, oh well, I found a new way to get round that. Instead of turning it on like that, I just whack it. You know, there's going to be a benefit to actually rerouting the wires and changing the way that the computer works. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that, because I feel it's quite, I can't think of the word, but I think it's one of those things that people don't always make the distinction between coping with something and your actual coding and how you are taught to believe, feel, act. Coding can always be changed. Yes, there are some parts of coding that are easier to deal with than others, but you can always change the coding. You can always, your brain can be rewired. Your brain is so intelligent, and you can, the power of your mind is just phenomenal. And I've watched a lot of Darren Brown stuff recently. I don't always love everything that he does, but there are some things where he shows the power of the mind, you know, where people are able to not feel pain, physical pain. Like we watched one where he had a guy, literally just from talking to him, he got him to not feel his hand. And then this man put by his own free will and choice, he put a needle through the skin of his hand, and there was no blood. It didn't hurt. Like, he felt no pain. He didn't do anything, and he said it felt really surreal, and he didn't believe that it was his own hand that he was doing it to. If he hadn't have done it himself, he would have questioned it all. And I think that is a really clear indicator of how powerful your mind can be when you take control of it. And so you can recode, you can change these thoughts, these patterns, these beliefs, but you have to choose to do that. And it has to be a conscious choice to do that, rather than just saying, oh, well, this is how I am now, I'll just find a way to deal with it, which is the choice to cope. Obviously, in the short term, for example, if you're having like a panic attack or something, then you want to have that short-term coping strategy to help you get through the moment. But long term, you wouldn't choose to have panic attacks, anxiety attacks for the rest of your life if you could know that you could do something about it to change that, to stop that ever happening again, of course. So, and that's possible. And I know that as well, because I've managed to do that myself. I used to have full-blown panic attacks. I used to think I couldn't breathe. I literally, there was one time I was sat in the car. I just arrived outside the school to do the school run. And I literally was about to get out of the car. And in fact, I did get out of the car. And I took about 3 steps out of the car. And then all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. And this absolute like crushing pressure around me made me think, there's no air for me. I can't breathe. I don't know what to do. And then go into this whole horrible turmoil of panic. What do I do now? I can't breathe. Where do I go? How do I get help? What can I do? And it ended up, I think I did end up doing a post about this, but it was a while ago, so I can't remember where it is. I'll have to see if I can find it. But I did end up having to have what I called my survival kit, to do the school run, or to even to just be out of the house wherever I was. And that would involve having water with me all the time. I mean, I always have water with me wherever I go, and I have done for years. But it would be a case of having water with me, so I knew I could always get a drink. Having chewing gum with me, so I knew I could always have something to take my mind off of what was going on. And I'd have to have like a what's the word? Eucalyptus oil inhaler that I could breathe, so it would allow me to feel that I could actually breathe air in through my nose, and I could regulate my breathing. Now that sounds absolutely ridiculous to talk about it now. I remember though so strongly the panic. I remember so clearly, like it was yesterday, how much I was in a state. I was in tears, and then I couldn't calm myself down. I got myself all caught up and everything, and I literally was searching my car to find something that I could chew to take my mind away from it and just calm. And that was the only way I found, was to have something to chew, something to drink, something to smell, and know that I was covered. I've done a lot of made a lot of inner changes since then, inner and outer, but a lot has changed on the inside for me since then. A lot of recoding, a lot of changing my beliefs about my who I am, what I'm doing, everything, and a lot of, yeah, well, I guess it's just recoding. But obviously in that moment I needed a coping technique, and I created my own way of coping to get through that moment. And all the moments that came after, that wasn't the last time, there were other moments after that, but that was a particularly severe time. The moments after that, I had a way of coping with it, and knowing that I would be okay because I had my ways of coping in that moment. But obviously long term, that's not a solution. That's not something to it's not something that is desirable, or something that anybody should think, well, this is it, I've got this for life now, this is how it's going to be, because it doesn't have to be that way. And I am living proof of that. I know that, And I know I'm still on my journey of working through my the way I talk to myself at times, but I think everybody is. I think that's an ever-evolving journey, because the way I talk to myself now is nowhere near how I used to talk to myself a couple of years ago, or even longer ago. But I truly hope that in another year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I'll be able to say, wow, I've changed so much. Again, I've evolved so much, because I've kept that devotion to myself, that this is a bigger thing than just a 5-minute fix. This is a lifetime of choosing me over anything else. So I think that was a bit more long-winded than I expected it to be, but that's how it's gone. Let's have a look and see who wants an energy reading.